Advancing the talks in Copenhagen, the EU Climate Commissioner will announce her strategy as a new report shows loopholes in existing UN climate treaties. Energy Secretary Steven Chu warns U.S. jobs are in jeopardy if wind projects stop getting stimulus funds. And the EU pushes the world to adopt safety standards for nuclear power plants.
From the Energy News Center in Washington, D.C., this is the Energy Report with Susan McGinnis.
Good morning, I'm Susan McGinnis. Thanks for joining us for the Energy Report on this 8th day of March 2010. Reuters says the UN climate agreement reached in Copenhagen contains a couple of loopholes that, if not closed, could lead to an increase in climate emissions in the next decade. This is according to a draft report out of the European Union. The report says developed countries' pledges for emissions cuts will lead to a reduction of 13.2 to 17.8% in the next decade, far short of the 25 to 40% scientists recommend. It says two loopholes must be closed that could make things worse. One, spare emissions permits left after the Soviet Union's collapse. If not eradicated, it says it could reduce developed nations' emissions cuts to 6.4% below 1990 levels over the next decade. The other loophole, loose emissions rules on agriculture and deforestation, which the report says could erode 9 percentage points from emissions cuts. All told, it says this could lead to emissions from developed countries of a 2% reduction to a 2.6% increase. EC Climate Commissioner Connie Hedegaard will announce her strategy tomorrow for advancing world climate talks. Energy Secretary Steven Chu says the controversy over stimulus grants for wind projects is putting U.S. jobs at stake. A group of Senate Democrats wants the Energy Department to suspend the grant program until Congress can be sure private projects are required to use all American suppliers. But Chu says that move would mean more U.S. job losses. Speaking at the Wall Street Journal's economics conference in California, Chu said it doesn't make sense to stall projects where 2/3 of the hardware is American and 1/3 is foreign. He says he'll work with Congress to explain the subtleties of the global wind energy market. The American Council on Renewable Energy is also weighing in on the issue. The group wrote to Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner urging against halting the grant program. The group says many U.S.-owned companies manufacture abroad, and it wants Congress to encourage them to bring those operations home. The Obama administration has been clear that storing nuclear waste at Yucca Mountain is off the table. Energy Secretary Steven Chu said that only means the country is free to find a better solution. The White House has said storing the nuclear waste outside Las Vegas is not an option. The 27-year-old project has seen its budget slashed by Congress in the past several years. Well, this past week, DOE formally asked the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to withdraw the license application for Yucca Mountain. Chu says scientists have learned more about the repository, making it less of an ideal option to store the country's nuclear waste. Recently, Chu appointed a blue ribbon panel of experts to explore alternatives to Yucca Mountain. He says the group will come out with a study first on the issue of managing nuclear waste on a long-term basis rather than spend the money building a waste storage facility. Well, one of the biggest sticking points in the so-called nuclear renaissance is the storage of nuclear waste. And today, the head of the European Commission is urging the world to join new EU security rules for nuclear power plants. Jose Manuel Barroso said today he wants all countries to have the right to civilian nuclear energy, but that means adopting global standards. Last year, the EU agreed with the International Atomic Energy Agency on nuclear safety norms on issues like safe construction and operation of reactors, handling and disposal of radioactive materials, and giving information to the public. These were legally binding across the 27-nation bloc. Other nations using nuclear power have similar standards, but EU officials said making the rules legally binding in Europe had made them more enforceable, and they want to see similar standards of enforcement globally. If member governments agree, the bloc is expected to present the proposal at a summit meeting scheduled for next month in Washington. Meanwhile, French President Nicolas Sarkozy is urging the U.S. and developing countries to embrace nuclear energy and help pay for it. He also spoke this morning at the Paris conference. Sarkozy wants France, the world's second biggest nuclear producer, to lead a global nuclear energy expansion. But attempts by France's Areva to sell plants and equipment overseas have fallen flat in recent months. Sarkozy also dismissed the egotistic rich country perception that poor countries don't have the right to nuclear technology because they can't be trusted to keep it safe. He is calling for an enhanced International Atomic Energy Agency with broader powers and scoreboard to rate international reactors on safety. Wyoming Governor Dave Freudenthal has signed into law the nation's first state excise tax on wind energy production. The $1 per megawatt hour tax on wind energy generated in the state goes into effect in 2012. Freudenthal said the tax is needed because wind projects already get federal subsidies while fossil fuel production is taxed. But Rob Gramlich of the American Wind Energy Association says it sends the wrong message to the industry.
It was a damaging idea. It does take certainly reduces the incentive to build there. And the problem is that state has challenges already. It's far from population centers, and they need to realize that they've got a lot of work to do to compete with the other states that are well ahead of them on wind development.
Well, the governor also signed a bill to extend the state's permitting authority over wind farms and their related collector transmission lines. He also plans to sign a bill that would set minimum county standards and restrictions for wind developments. We will find out in about a month where Boone Pickens plans to put that massive wind farm. Pickens announced last week he plans to develop 500 megawatts of U.S. wind power with 324 turbines made by GE, but didn't say where. He did say they won't be in the Texas Panhandle where he had originally planned because the area lacks transmission capacity. Pickens will make a formal announcement about the wind farm in 30 days. CERA Week 2010 is getting underway in Houston today, considered the world's premier energy conference. It will focus on oil, natural gas, power, and the global economic outlook. It includes sessions on preparing the electricity grid for electric cars, the potential for renewables, and prospects for carbon capture and storage and for nuclear power. Headliners include Secretary of Energy Stephen Chu, National Economic Council Director Lawrence Summers, and CEOs from Saudi Aramco, Statoil, ConocoPhillips, Petrobras, and Dow Chemical, and others, all giving their views on the challenges of the global energy future. We have a Clean Skies News team there all week. We'll be hearing special reports and in-depth interviews with key newsmakers there throughout the week. Let's take a look now at some energy goings-on around the Beltway. At 11, EPA Administrator Lisa Jackson is at the National Press Club to talk about EPA's progress in 2009 and the agency's priorities for 2010. Clean Skies News will be there. At 3:15, the U.S. Energy Association and U.S. Agency for International Development hold a briefing at the Ronald Reagan Building on the current status of energy efficiency and sustainability programs overseas. That's the Energy Report. Thanks for joining us in the Energy News Center. For any suggestions or comments about our programming, you can find us at contact@cleanskies.com, and you can find us on Twitter and Facebook too. I'm Susan McGinnis. This is Clean Skies News.